I understand that we have Dave Barnett coming on here.
Yes, a very important person.
That's kind of a big deal.
Yeah, we're
Well done,
thrilled.
Jen.
Yeah.
Securing, yes. Well, I'll go ahead and let him in.
All right, I'd like to give the official BeerNet Radio welcome to David Barnett, president of Mark Anthony Brands. David is, of course, a longtime vet of Diageo. He came into the C-suite at Mark Anthony back in 2022 and is steering the U.S. ship. As people know, Mark Anthony is the number one flavor/RTD bev-out company. They had a pretty good 25, having brought White Claw back to growth, gained share of beer, hatched some interesting plans for 26, which we'll talk about today. Just reached the giant milestone of 1 billion cases lifetime, and they plan to do that again shortly here. So lots to talk about. Welcome, David.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. I'm glad to be here.
So the big news, we reported back in December, and then I came on the pod and complained because there was always breaking news. So I apologize about complaining about breaking news, but that Phil Rossi took over the CEO-ship from Anthony von Mondel. He announced in December. I just want to read a little bit from his note announcing this. He pointed out that Phil will only be the second CEO since Mark Anthony was founded in 1972. And AVM said he thinks of this moment to refound, or thinks of this as the moment to refound Mark Anthony, bring renewed action-driven purpose and drive to the company. And the big, hairy goal is to double the business globally on the back of your RTD expertise. So some really, really big goals and aspirations there, but I'm sure you guys can do it, right?
We're never short of dreaming, and dreaming big. That is for sure.
Nice.
Well, it's happened before.
Yeah, it has. Yeah. Well,
so it could happen again.
It could, and let's hope it doesn't take 26 more years to get the next billion.
Maybe just, make it a little bit shorter. But how's it? Phil's been in the seat now for 2 months. How has that been so far? Has it changed the dynamics at all or not really?
It's big news in the sense that, there's only been one person to ever have the CEO title at the company, and that's Anthony. It's not big news in the sense that, this has been a disciplined and kind of really planful approach, starting with my hire, almost 4 years ago now, and really trying to get Anthony in a place to have the confidence in the organization where he can get on with the next chapter of what he wants to work on and do, and the company can continue to progress and elevate. So naturally, a step in that journey was him relinquishing the CEO title, and the only person that could take, the second shot at the CEO would be Phil. Given Phil's 18-year history with Anthony, their deep relationship, Phil's, really great understanding and track record of the business in the U.S. He has incredible followership across the organization since he joined. So, it has only been a couple months. Phil is going through his process right now to really get underneath all the different parts of the business, help us clarify our strategy for the future, and try and turn our 26 years of 1 billion cases into something much shorter. And the company is really optimistic about all this and really embracing Phil, because, a lot of companies have to go through CEO changes when something is going wrong or they're in a crisis situation. And we're in a beautiful position where we are anything but that. And this has been very planful. So far, everything's going very much to plan.
Right.
Now, I think you're right, because Phil has worked so long there, and you have to know Anthony's mind to run this company. Anthony's been very consistent. I think you're right in that it just frees up Anthony to be super big picture stuff, which is what he's really good at. Flavor, obviously. I want Anthony in a white coat, and I want Phil in a suit. That's where I want them. And is that accurate?
Anthony will never give up coming to our conference in October of every year, standing up on that stage and doing what he does about,
In a
us
white
and
coat.
in a white coat.
It's
A
the
lab
best.
coat. A lab coat for those who are
Yeah.
listening. He's the awesome. It's the best part of a Mark Anthony convention, a distributor convention, is when they bring out all the competitive products and his snark. It's very subtle, but he's like, "Can you believe they actually put this product out in the market? Can you believe they subjected their consumers to this product? Things like that." And it's always hilarious, and it's my favorite part of a Mark Anthony convention.
Yeah. I mean, commercially with distributors in the room and sometimes retailers, you're cringing a little bit, but only he has the right to do it. And it's so funny, Harry, because we literally are still in the early stages of we have a slide where we're taking Anthony through. Here's what we want you to work on in the future. Here's what we, think you can have an opportunity to maybe free up some time to do some other things. But white lab coat NCC is in the we want you to do in the future.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I have not had the pleasure of doing that yet. I cannot believe, but this year I am going, and I want that white lab coat. Absolutely.
You've never been to one of our conferences, Jen?
Can you believe that? I have not. You know why? Because it's on the end. It's like during, the gauntlet of distributor conventions. And like, I'd be like after MBWA. And at that point, my kids have forgotten that they have a mom. And
Right.
I got to stay out of this one. But I'm going to do it this year. So, this year's
Okay,
the year.
October 1st and 2nd. Put it on your calendar.
I will. Absolutely. I will. Well, so, you and Phil have your work cut out for you because y'all are the number one flavor company. But what's going to keep you number one, especially now that AB has Beatbox and they're like number 3 now, right? And I'm sure they would love to be number 1. So how are you guys gonna stay out ahead?
I mean, we think we are in a great spot. 26 share of flavor, many times bigger than number 2 or number 3 and beyond. We have a very kind of focused, premium, efficient portfolio off the back of White Claw, Mike's, and Cayman Jack. You mentioned it earlier. White Claw is on the verge of volume growth, not just dollar growth, and we'll talk about that maybe a little bit later in detail. Cayman Jack still has a long runway of growth through a lot of different ways. We got a ton of works to do on Mike's. We know that, and we're working on that. And then it's about finding, the 4th or 5th mega brand for us to kind of build the next journey of the company. We love this product called Mixed Drinks Company, MXD. It's an FMB, high ABV. It's cocktail inspired. It's almost going to be 2 million cases this year. It's growing double digits. We're expanding it nationally. We're just getting kind of started in spirits RTDs with our own brands, Olay and Dillon's. But naturally, spirits RTDs is the gap in our portfolio. And we're gonna fill that gap through creating our own brands and looking at proper acquisitions. But we also think that, and we say this all the time here, like saying no to things is equally, if not more important than saying yes to things. We are not going to be a company where we just throw spaghetti against the wall and try and chase every little new trend. And have we missed some things? Yeah, we probably missed some things over the course of the last couple of years. But commercially also, we're still very, very small in the on-premise. It's only 7 million of our 102 million cases. We believe there's a huge runway there. We're just getting started in areas like category management and making it easier for shoppers to understand this flavor category. And retailers are telling us all the time, there's so much stuff in these sets. Can you help us as the leader? And we believe that's good for the category. That's good for us. That's good for the customers. And then we're constantly obsessed with, being really consumer led in marketing, and executing at the highest levels with our distributors. So, you know, we're watching obviously what everyone is doing, and certainly like ABI has done a great job. I mean, between the work they've done on Cutwater over the last decade, the work that they've done on Neutral over the last couple of years, now buying Beatbox. I mean, clearly they, in particular, are starting to plant more of a realistic flag in making hay in flavor. But we believe we're in a great position to continue doing what we're doing.
Awesome. There's a lot to dig in there. One more for me because I know Jordan has a lot of questions. But A, am I hearing that any M&A will be canned cocktails centric?
We're focused on that right now, yes, but we're not like it's not like we're saying it's spirits RTDs or nothing.
Okay.
If there's other things that come up, we will look at it if it makes strategic sense for us. But yes, that is obviously the glaring kind of hole in our portfolio right now.
Yeah, and then I think Jordan would also be curious about this too. Maybe this is your question. I'm sorry, Jay, but before I forget, I want to ask like the whole category captainship is interesting. What does flavor like how do you in a nutshell optimize for flavor with category captainship, or is that just like for an entire other conversation as you guys try to figure that out better?
It's a great question, and it's one we are also discussing on what our approach is going to be. But what is really interesting and surprising to us is that when we've opened up this conversation, the way we open it up, the conversation with retailers is we think flavor is still crazy confusing to the everyday shopper.
Hmm.
You know, the difference between malt and spirits, seltzers and FMBs and cocktails, it often blends into like a non-alc mocktail RTD kind of set also. There's so many SKUs, there's so many new brands. And it's gotten a little bit better, but it's still really confusing. And when we say that to retailers, large ones, they say we totally agree. And there are some who have said, and this is going to be a bit controversial, I think, but there are some that have said, would you be willing to take the lead on the entire beer plus RTD set?
Hmm.
And that's where then we step back and we're like, okay, like that's a different challenge than advising or captaining flavor in particular. So, what I do know is the door is open and retailers are very, very receptive, some new players at the table, and really do want to clean this up to make it easier for shoppers and grow the overall, what I call beer plus RTD category. Not just flavor, not just beer, but all of it combined.
Do you think there's an optimal way to organize it on the shelf?
The way that we've described, if you're walking down the aisle and there's the long beer and RTD run on your left side. The way we are principally organizing it is flavor should go first as you enter the aisle as a premium destination, and then it goes hard seltzer, FMB, spirits, RTDs, and prepared cocktails, and then you get into your imported beer and then get into your domestic and craft run.
Because that's where the margin is.
Exactly. Bingo.
Yeah.
That's where the retailer margin is. And I'm interested in that you put FMBs first in the flow, let's say the retail flow, before spirit-based RTDs, because the margin is higher on FMBs, I believe. I mean, as far as like pack per pack.
The retail margin, I mean, it could be, it's probably about the same at the end of the day.
Well, I mean, the price is higher, so the margin's higher. I get it, but I'm just talking about, they're priced so high but they have to be because of the taxes.
Yeah, that is true. And then within that set, we also are looking at, lower ABV versus higher ABV and where that goes in the top to bottom flow. Higher ABV at top, lower ABV at eye level and in below. So we've done quite a bit of work on this, Jordan, and it's starting to resonate with retailers.
Yeah.
We actually have about this spring we will probably have 300 to 400 outlets where we will be kind of in test mode with, I would say tier 2 national retailers, not like any of the majors, but getting our feet wet to understand what this could mean.
Wow. Okay. We'll have to check back in with you on how that's going. But I want to talk a little more about White Claw, because last year there was a point where you started looking at weekly scans, and then it was just consistent growth over and over and over. What happened last year for y'all to just get that band back to growth and then continue to grow, through year end?
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy that this year is going to be, the 10-year anniversary of White Claw, introduced in 2016. And we've been through a lot over the 10 years. And we've talked about this before in terms of like, the gold rush that happened and now where we are in the hard seltzer kind of stabilization focus phase. I think that has a lot to do with it. There was at one point in time almost 2,000 seltzer SKUs. Now there's 500 seltzer SKUs out of 6,000 total flavor SKUs. So about 10% of the SKUs makes a lot more sense. Number two is, and I've said this before when I spoke at your guys' conference a little while ago, is I think and we deeply believe that the quality of the product, our gluten-free base that we have been perfecting, and Anthony kind of spends his life journey on making sure that the base of the product tastes better than anything else out there. And that shows in White Claw. And we hear it all the time from consumers that I've tried every other seltzer out there over the last couple of years. And when I want a seltzer, it's going to be White Claw because it is the cleanest tasting, most natural flavoring, and particularly, black cherry. Number three is, for the last 3 to 4 years, we've been really consistent in our marketing, really focused on what this brand is all about in terms of bringing people together. That has, manifested itself in a campaign called Grab Life by the Claw, which we introduced 3 years ago, and we're building on it more and more every year, and we're making it stronger and stronger. So we're not all over the board in terms of how we're talking to consumers. We've been investing more and more in culture, particularly around music. When you go to a music festival, this is an incredible stat. When you go to a music festival where White Claw is present and available for sale at a concessionaire, we have a 40 share of that beer plus RTD sales in a music festival. We're now in 150 different music festivals and venues, and we're getting bigger and bigger in terms of our partnerships with artists and how we go to market on music. We have a big partnership with Live Nation, and we're doing some really other exciting things coming in the next couple of months. The other thing is, we've been really purposeful on innovation. And when I mean purposeful, I mean like we've done some stuff that didn't work, and we've made the tough decision to get out of it. Refreshers, lemonade, vodka plus soda was a really hard decision. At one point in time, it was 1 million cases in its first year. So on paper, you'd say like, wow, we had 1 million case business on White Claw vodka plus soda. But what we were hearing underneath it was consumers were so confused on why it was actually different from our core white can. And we do pride ourselves, and we tell this to our distributors and retailers all the time, that if you go in with us on an innovation that doesn't work, we will cut it. And I don't think a lot of companies do that. And we've done that really diligently on White Claw, where now we have our core product, 5%. We have our Surge higher ABV in the blue can. We have White Claw Zero if you're not drinking, and that still is very early days. And now we've started with Claw Tails, which is a different drinking occasion, lower carbonated, etc. So we have a very focused White Claw portfolio. We know what we stand for. We have consistent marketing, and the quality of the product at the end of the day is really good. And the amount of competition out there, we really have kind of led the reduction in all these SKUs and the confusion in the category. There's a lot there, man.
Quick anecdote. I remember back in 2015 or 16 or whatever, when Sanjeev, some reason I was at the White Claw headquarters meeting with Phil, and Sanjeev came in. He goes, "Oh, Sanjeev wants to show you something." I was like, "All right." We were there for talking about mics. And Sanjeev comes in with a 4-pack of White Claw, and he's like, "We're going to launch this. It's going to be the greatest thing ever. What it's going to be a huge hit." And I drank it, and I was like, "Oh yeah, it's very good, very good." And I walked out of there. I was like, "That's not going to be a huge hit. It's not going to be huge because I know everything, and I've missed every single thing." I remember when light beer came out in the 70s. I was like, "No, never going to work." So I'm the worst prognosticator, but I remember when he came in, and I remember like even Phil was like, "This is going to be the next big thing, man. It's going to be the next." And I don't know how they knew, but it was the next big thing. It was the biggest thing that ever since light beer or Smirnoff Ice. And it created a whole category to where SNL was creating skits about how an oil company is coming out with a seltzer. Everybody came after White Claw, and White Claw remained.
Yeah,
White Claw is still here.
It's I'll give you a funny anecdote. I was at Diageo at this time, 2016, 17, 18, and I mean, if I sat in a meeting at Diageo at that time, 80% of the meeting was what is this White Claw thing? And 9 out of 10 slides were trying to dissect what White Claw was, and what should we do? Kind of, and
it's a vodka soda at beer pricing.
Yeah,
and occasions.
So I didn't. Unfortunately, I wasn't here yet at the company to see the beginning days, but I've heard about it, and I've heard so many people say stories of it's. Nobody ever thought it was going to be what it would be. Anthony certainly did, and he made sure everyone else believed also eventually.
I just wanted to follow up. Y'all were right on White Claw, and you've been right on the phases you thought that hard seltzer would go through too. The focus stage, the choline of the reduction, has that happened to the degree that you would like to see? And also, I think at a time y'all said maybe 2 or 3 players might be left standing. Do you think that's still the case, or do you think it could be even fewer?
In terms of like the category culling, I think it's starting to get to a place on a national basis. It's starting to get to a place where we envisioned it years ago. Like I said, it's 500 SKUs out of 6,000 total total flavor SKUs out there. It's a category that's about 100 million cases out of 450 million cases. So you just kind of do the round math, and it's not so overly indexed. What I think we got wrong was the industry should have taken this effort 12, 24, 36 months ago, because we were talking about this whole kind of phased approach. Even when I first got here in 2022, that was almost 4 years ago already. So to get to this point now, like, it's a little late, but I'm glad that we've gotten there. I do think if you look at the category today, and the way I define seltzer is, I don't care whether it's a malt base, a sugar base, or a spirits base, but 70% of that category is White Claw and High Noon. So whether it's Red Bull and Monster, Coke and Pepsi, like however you want to look at it, whatever prism you want to look at it through, it is a 2-brand category. Yeah. And yes, there will always be 10, 15, 20, 30% of the category with other players. And I think that is okay. And I think that's healthy. Happy Dad is doing its thing a little bit right now. You got Carbless, which is doing its thing a little bit right now. You got other things regionally that make sense. So the thing that I'm really excited about is the category is actually growing again for the first time. White Claw has been growing in terms of dollars. White Claw now is growing volume again, more recent periods, but the category is actually growing again, which is what we really wanted to see in terms of the inflection point of, really hitting the strides of this focus phase. Does that make sense to you guys?
Yeah,
Absolutely, it
absolutely.
does because
David, I wanted to
correct.
ask you because you kind of answered my question, but I was going to ask you if White Claw's bigger long-term competitor was High Noon or Truly, and you basically said it was High Noon, and it just kind of begs the question of where can cocktails fit for you guys, spirits RTDs? I mean, is that what's going to help accelerate you guys getting to the billion case mark again in, I don't know, 5, 10 years, right? Like, where does that fit in your portfolio?
I mean, it has to be a meaningful part of our business in the next 5 years and certainly beyond. I probably should say it needs to be a meaningful part of our portfolio in the next couple years. Um, it is obvious that more and more consumers are understanding the difference in terms of, bases and what it means to them and occasions and experiences. Um, so, while we may have kind of wanted to bury our heads in the sand a little bit over the last couple of years, we're all in. And um, you know, I'll give you an interesting stat. What scares me about spirits RTDs, and that's spirits-based seltzers and canned cocktails, is I mentioned this before, there are 6,000 flavor SKUs, right now scanning in America. Spirits RTDs is 2,700 of them. It's almost, not quite, it's almost 50% of the SKUs, and it's only about 25% of the volume. So, it's very akin right now to what hard seltzer looked like a number of years ago. And of those brands and SKUs, there's only 13 brands that are 13 spirits RTD brands that are 1 million cases or more.
Mm.
So thousands and thousands and thousands of SKUs, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of brands, only 13 are 1 million cases or more. And most of those 13 million case brands, they took 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe even 10 years to get to that 1 million case threshold and above. There are certainly some anomalies to that did it quicker. So we have to figure out how to create products. Olay and Dillon's are our two that we've created, and get it going in a way that beats the traditional. Nobody gets to 1 million cases, really, and they take 5 or 6 or 7 years to get going. And then we have to figure out how to overlay on top of that some accelerators, likely through possible partnerships or acquisition. Now, Olay and Dillon's just started in 2024 in literally like 2 markets. It was Massachusetts and it was Michigan. And 2 years later, we're going to be in like 15 or 20 markets this year. We've introduced a vodka cocktail line. It was originally a gin cocktail line. It had some hurdles because of gin, and now we're getting it right, and it's growing 100% every single month. It doesn't hit any radars because it's still, only a couple 100,000 cases. Olay is, we just tested it last year, really in California, Arizona, and Nevada for a few months to make sure we had the right product and the right liquid and the right packaging. It started in Canada and make sure we had the supply chain. And now we're taking it, for the most part, national this spring. So we're really only in year 1 of Olay. So I gotta believe, I wanna believe, and this is what I'm talking about all the time here, that when we fast forward a year or 2 from now, we're much bigger in this space.
Mm-hmm.
But it's got to be in a disciplined and focused way. It's not going to be through, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 brands, and we're putting a whole bunch of stuff against the wall, and we're taking focus and energy off of our core business, because you guys know this. Like, when you run a company, distractions are the kiss of death. And we're really trying to make sure we stay focused and energized on the right things. And if it doesn't work, we kill it. If it does work, we really fuel it.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting because like you contextualize those 13 brands or so that are the majority. But as you kind of nodded to, there are a couple that reached the 1 million case mark very quickly, right? Like Surfside, I think got to 1 million cases in a year. Lucky One, but that's kind of not fair because it's a High Noon spinoff, right? So you have built-in trial off a giant base, but still, I mean, that's pretty crazy. So is that what you're hoping to be able to cut through the clutter and do, or?
I think on Olay and Dillon's, it's going to take longer.
Mhm.
Why? Because Surfside and to an extent Sun Cruiser, hats off to Clem and Boston on all that. Tea was already a very established category. Consumers are very used to tea in alcohol in terms of occasions and consumption. So it was almost a natural migration to a vodka plus tea versus traditional FMB. So there was a very inherent category to build on. I'm not going to comment on Lucky One because that's a different model, as you mentioned. Dillon's is a handcrafted cocktail. It really is about the expression of the spirit in it. It started with gin, and now we're doing vodka, and we got to get some things kind of moving, a little bit faster there. And Olay, there really, right or wrong, there really is no tequila-centric RTD category right now. There's margarita products. Cutwater has a really nice margarita product. There's other margarita products inside of Spirit RTD brands, but there has not yet been a tequila-centric brand that has broken through in Spirit's RTDs, and that's what Olay is. We're leading with our Paloma. We're leading with our chili mango. Yes, we have a great tasting margarita, but we're doing it in a little bit of a different way. And therefore, when you're trying to educate or create new categories or subcategories that aren't anchored in something really big and frequent for consumers and familiar already, it just takes longer. So that's where I think Olay and Dillon's are going to take a little bit longer, but I want to try and supplement that with something else that's going to take a little bit shorter, if you know what I mean.
But to kind of switch gears, would you guys ever get into flavored wine? I mean, AVM started with wine, right? Or I've heard you mention beer unprompted a bunch of times on this conversation. Would you ever get into flavored beer?
Listen, if I was going to put a prediction on it, I think I'd be more inclined to figure out the right way to do beer. Wine, probably not. Our wine assets and our wineries are very, very important to Anthony, and they are some of the most prestigious in the world. But there is not really a commercial business opportunity in the U.S.
Are you trying to tell me that the guy who's the biggest flavor guy in the U.S. is not going to take his wine brands and bastardize them into a beatbox-like product? Like
That's right.
that's where he draws the line.
Jen,
That's
you
where
can
Anthony
suggest
draws
that
the
to
line.
him.
Yeah. It's like there's some real terroir opportunity in this RTD flavored wine.
So that's where we're at on the wine thing. We wine plays a role in the company, but it's not a big U.S. commercial opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
When y'all are thinking about innovation, do you lean towards malt or spirits? I mean, uh, I think it's interesting with y'all because your malt base you've perfected so well that it's comparable to spirit bases. I mean, that's what we see at the distributor meeting. So are you able to kind of formulate a product and then decide, well, we could either do malt or we could do spirits, or do you kind of lean one way or another when you're making something?
We really start with the occasion first. We really start with the target consumer first. We really start with where do we think there's a sliver of white space to create a product to go after something new. And then we ultimately get to, okay, is there a real reason why it should be a spirits-based product or our core, gluten-free base product, based on the product idea or the positioning or the price point, or what it really stands for. So we have, and we are getting into that debate more and more, Jordan, on what it should be. And it's hard. It makes it complicated, honestly. Naturally we have gravitated more towards our core business and our malt business. And we've done Dylan's, and we're doing Olay, and we've tried one or two other things on really, really small scale. We tried on White Claw with vodka. So, but it is becoming more and more important to really understand from a consumer's point of view, and then intersection with the brand idea. Does it make a really big difference on what the base is?
Jen?
Yeah, yeah. No, well, all of that leads to let's talk dirty, Mike's Dirty Lemonade. I'm curious, like, obviously this has been a trend, especially online, right? People putting weird things in their sodas. So what were the insights, the consumer insights behind that, and why stick it with the Mike's brand?
Yeah, I mean, everyone knows about the dirty trend that's been going on. I mean, crazy social virality on TikTok, a really, really young kind of demographic getting after it. Different kind of liquid and drinking experience in terms of quality and taste and flavors. And, if you think about what Mike's needs, it needs all that. It
Yeah.
needs a social, cultural moment. It needs younger consumers. We knew we can make a great tasting product that resembled what these dirty sodas are all about, which we did. Frankly, it needs a non-carbonated SKU, and it's non-carbonated. And the brand needs, a shot in the arm
Yeah.
with all of that. So, and we know how hard it is. We've been talking about it for the last 47 minutes. We know how hard it is to create things from scratch. So, it was almost like a no-brainer for us. And we have hard, we have harder, and dirty.
Yeah.
And it like actually like sounds really good. And we're going to do some really cool marketing around that. So hard, harder, and dirty, like, you could just, your creative brain waves go off right now.
Yeah. Yeah. When are you guys rolling that? Have you shared that?
We just started shipping it, so you'll be able to buy it at retail like in, mid-February, starting really nationally in March.
Very, very cool. And then
And would that be more grocery or C-store play, you think?
It's going to be, I think the bulk of the volume is going to be in our core 12-pack business, large, grocery. We have some singles, but I think singles will take a little bit longer. If the brand really starts working, then maybe, it'll become a C-store play.
Yeah.
Do you see it working on premise? And then I'm curious more generally to go back to your comments about the on premise. What are the opportunities immediately for you there?
Our focus on dirty is not really on premise, honestly. It's really about getting the brand established in large format. There might be some opportunities for us in some places on premise. Our focus on premise right now, frankly, is White Claw and Olay and Dylan's.
Okay.
I've said this before. What are there? There's like 400,000 on premise accounts in America, maybe 350,000 or so. We're in about 100,000 of them on White Claw. And I think the vast majority of on-premise accounts these days are carrying some kind of flavor SKU, something that's in a can that's not a traditional beer. And we believe that if they're carrying something that's in a can that's not a traditional beer, they should be entertaining and carrying White Claw. And we hear this from our consumers all the time that men in particular have no problem drinking White Claw on premise if it was available. So, job number one is getting the distribution on it. And then job number two is creating the pull through on it through activations and, everything else you need to do on premise to win with gatekeepers. And I mean, I've said that, like, I would love for our business shape to be 15 to 20% on premise on White Claw. Today, it's about 7% on White Claw. So, could it double one day? I think it could. We just need to start really working on it, investing in it differently, executing with our distributors, partnering with the trade, and all that is a different skill set than honestly what we've been used to over the last 20-something years building this portfolio. So this is a bit of a new muscle that we are really working on for the future.
Right now, it's basically just White Claw and High Noon and on premise. at least nationally. From a bar owner's perspective, it seems to me like it's more economically viable to push White Claw because the cost is lower, and it's basically a vodka soda, whereas a High Noon is more closely higher priced, to the margins even squeezed more than serving a Tito's and soda.
Important. It's a really important thing, Harry, because I mean, I'm going to come at it from a slightly different angle, which is, and this is what, and I'm going to get, bashed for this.
Yes.
We're
No.
all getting a bash.
which is when you walk into an on-premise account today and there's 6 RTDs, flavor products on a menu. Let's just White Claw, High Noon, Cutwater, Surfside, Sun Cruiser, whatever it may be. You know what they are? They're all the same price.
Yeah.
$9, $10, $11. You go to the beer menu, they're not all the same price. Imported beer versus domestic beer, high ABV versus low ABV, craft versus craft versus national. So what I've been saying is like to make RTDs more attractive in the on-premise, there needs to be some pricing differentiation because there's differentiation, to your point, on the cost of acquisition. You follow me?
Yes.
And they're all the same price. And I think you get a lot more trade up from some other categories if you actually provided some distinction in price points to consumers in the menu. That's going to be I'm off my soapbox now.
Listen, but there also is a trade-off on the other side, meaning that when White Claw is priced with High Noon, it almost elevates the halo on White Claw.
It does. So
it translates, oh, this is equal. And yet when I go to H-E-B or Kroger, it's, 75% of the price. You're like, oh, this is wow, I'm getting a deal. What I'm going to say here is that we've taken up way more of your time than we deserve, for sure. And David, it's been a pleasure having you on BeerNet Radio, and we hope to have you back, like every year at least, if you're game.
I'd love to. It's great to be here, guys. Always good to see you, and we'll see you around the patch soon.
We'll see you around the patch. All right,
Cheers,
take care, guys.
David.
We'll see you next week.
Thank you.